Welcome. Glad to see all of you here to discover what our preliminary budget is going to sound like. So we'll start out with our invocation, and Ms. Carol Wheatley will come up here. You all please stand.
I'm Carol Wheatley. I am the president and senior chaplain at Power in the Workplace Ministries here in Melbourne. We are a community-centric training organization. We sponsor the Space Coast Prayer Breakfast, which many of you all attend, and I appreciate that. We also sponsor Transforming Your City, which is an opportunity for government, education, and business to come together and transform our county. So I appreciate it very much when Commissioner Smith's office called me and asked me to give the invocation. But before we actually pray, I got it, I'm a teacher. I wanted to share with you that the Bible has a lot to say about money, and especially about taxes and the people who are stewards and collect those taxes. And we, the people, pay our taxes. And it's that money that's appropriated in the hands of our elected government officials. As stewards of these funds, you all have the legal authority to disperse our money as you see fit for our benefit. But I'd like to remind you that many of you on this commission also have spiritual authority over this money. Now, what does that mean? It means that you're in a position to hear God and to do with our money what it is He tells you to do. So I'd like to pray for you commissioners this evening so that you'll hear God. Heavenly Father, we thank you that your hand is on our Board of Commissioners, that they have been elected by we the people, but they have been granted authority by you. Please give them the wisdom to discern and follow your will as they consider the discussions and comments from all of the constituents. Give our commissioners the ability to prioritize the needs of Brevard County residents for the greater good, not just to benefit some specific agendas. But mostly, Lord, remind them that they are stewards of the money given into their hands by we the people, and give them the courage to do what it is they know that you are calling them to do with that money. Lord, I bless Commissioner John Tobiah, Commissioner Christine Isnardi, Commissioner Jim Barfield, Commissioner Rita Pritchett, and Commissioner Kurt Smith. I ask you to keep them strong and in your will. Give them grace during the discussions and ensuing votes, and give them peace in knowing that they have done what is right in your eyes, Lord. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now we're going to go into agenda item 1A1. Mr. Abate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners. 1A1 allows for the reading of the tentative aggregate operating millage rate to fund the portion of the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget that is supported by property taxes. At this time, I would ask that the Budget Office read into the record the tentative aggregate millage rate for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, the aggregate tentative millage rate for the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget is 6.3268. The tentative aggregate millage rate is 4.02% less than the aggregate current fiscal year 2016-2017 millage rate of 6.5919. The aggregate rollback rate for the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget is 6.2967. The aggregate tentative millage rate for the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget is 6.3268. The tentative aggregate rate is 0.48% more than the aggregate rollback rate.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 1A2.
Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, 1A2 allows for the public to comment on the revised tentative county budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. Before we begin public comment, I would ask that the Budget Office read into the record the revised tentative budget information.
The fiscal year 2017-2018 tentative budget is $1,170,704,359. The budget represents a decrease of $57,118,185, or 4.65% less than the fiscal year 2016-2017 current budget of $1,227,822,544.
Mr. Chairman, we are now ready to accept public comments on the revised tentative budget for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Thank you, Mr. Abate. Our first speaker tonight is Linda Barrett.
Hello,
Hi there. Name and
Linda
address.
Barrett.
Thank you.
5960 Herons Landing Drive in Viera, and I am here to ask that the budget for Eels in particular and Parks and Rec in general not be cut, that it be given as much money as possible. And I ask that both on behalf of myself as a citizen of Brevard and on behalf of the Sierra Club, which I'm also representing this evening. You know, they joke about us Sierrans as tree huggers. Well, if you take away the money for the land, then there won't be any place to put the trees for us to hug. So, but seriously, there are many good recreational activities that take place on those lands, as well as preserving the history and the beauty of Florida as we've known it and as it was before we got here. So please, don't cut that money. Please keep it as high as possible. Thank you.
Sarah Aaron Conkling.
Good evening. We're all here getting our frequent flyer miles for being in the commission chambers. Thank you all for doing the doubleheader today. This is really public service at its finest. I just want to thank you for being willing to revisit the funding for the community action agencies and for the community-based organizations. It's extremely important to our community and those who have suffered the most from Hurricane Irma that we not make this point in time a point where we decide that we are going to make more people who are already vulnerable homeless. I just really appreciate you guys taking a minute to rethink this and to do the right thing. And I did not sponsor the invocation, but I would like to second everything that wonderful woman said in terms of our responsibility towards ourselves, our fellow citizens, and our God. So thank you all very much for your service and for being here really late tonight.
Judy McCloney.
Judy McClooney, 1908 Manor Drive, Cocoa, Florida. Florida. I, again, pretty much also want to ask for you to restore the county funding to the Community Action Agency and the community-based organizations. We've all been in tight places. We all have been helping each other with this wonderful community, putting up boards, and it affects everybody. And we didn't have internet shutter for over a week. We went to the library and we found out if the water was safe to drink and such. And so there's times when we all help each other. And I think when you're talking about community, that is really what you represent, and indeed it's a spiritual thing too. And there are times when you're talking about community, for this fund, you're talking about the people who are families, mothers with children, elderly people. And when I went shopping for the hurricane, I was so grateful that I had the money for that bottled water. I had the money to not worry so much about the utility bills. But we've all been in those tight places, and we all say there, but for the grace of God go I. And this fund, these community-based organizations, this action agency is often the last resort for someone to just keep those lights on for another month, to revive themselves from the extra expenses they had for the gas or the water that they had to pay. It's a one-time mercy for so many people, and we need to take the high road here and make sure that the least of us indeed have what we need. Could any of us be in that position? So I urge you and hope that you will use that spirit and your hearts to restore that funding. Thank you.
Lou Kotnick.
Hi, Lou Kotnick, Melbourne. And I've spoken to you before. I want to encourage you, as I have in the past and as so many others have in the past, to go ahead and keep full funding for the EELS program and the Parks and Recreation. I see it as being particularly important in connection with the lagoon, hence the shirt. I want to thank you for your diligence. Thank you for the support.
That's the end of our speakers' cards. Agenda item 1A3.
Mr. Chairman, Board of County Commissioners, for item 1A3, it is recommended that the Board of County Commissioners discuss and tentatively adopt the fiscal year 2017-2018 millage rates. Any changes to the millage rates under this item will be recomputed and announced under item 1A4.
Pleasure of the board. Commissioner Tobias.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. This is one question for Jill, who has done an excellent job with this. Thank you for explaining that millage rates. You went over a lot of numbers, and I'd just like an answer to something a little more basic. And I understand you had to read that stuff into the record for a specific purpose. So is the proposal a tax increase according to the Department of Revenue?
That is correct. Based on the aggregate tentative millage rate, if the board were to approve that rate, we would advertise a notice of proposed tax increase.
Thank you again for your diligent work, Joe.
Any other comments? Thoughts? Commissioner Barfield?
We've had discussion this morning. I brought up that we, and some of the speakers have spoken about this too, the emergency services function of which we cut $180,000 out of that. This fund at this time, I mean, we've had a number of different locations where they've been out of power. There've been places where rental properties have had water intrusion, cannot live there. And these are a lot of people that are living, one paycheck at a time. And I really believe that, as some of the speakers have said, I think we need to revisit this. This is extenuating circumstances, and I'd like for Mr. Golden to maybe give us a little bit more on this and explain what that money would be used for, how it would be used, and what happens if we don't do that.
Commissioners, in general, emergency services are dollars that have been set aside in the general fund for citizens that kind of fall through the cracks. We receive state and federal dollars to assist with certain services. The board in the past has provided additional dollars for those who don't quite meet that definition, but also have significant issues that come up. The funding that we do have set aside for next year was, as you recall, half of what was set aside this year, and there was also a position that was eliminated. What we have discussed, and what I heard discussed, was trying to seek to restore some of those funds, if not all, to serve those who have been impacted by Hurricane Irma. We have the ability to do that. We have the processes in place. The dollars that were cut from next year, if they were put back, we would seek to have that position back, because part of what we do through that process before we give any funds out is something called third-party verification. We never take anyone's word for what their needs are. We always verify through another agency, either the agency that has the bill in place, the need, the ability to serve that individual. We also never make payments directly to individuals. We always pay directly to an agency, whether that be a landlord or another agency that's providing service. In this instance, if we were to move forward, we have potentially some policy changes that we would make. One of the things I would seek to do is verify that individuals are not receiving aid from county dollars as well as, for example, FEMA. I know FEMA provides you a written notification if you are either eligible for or not eligible. So we would seek, as part of our third-party verification, that kind of information before we move forward with any type of assistance. Some of the services we've provided in the past have to do with deposits. We know that some of the things that we've heard from 211 up at the EOC during the event were some people who were renters and their landlords either did not have insurance or were making plans to sell the property instead of fixing it, and or that there were going to be delays because of how long it takes sometimes to get insurance for repairs to happen. So we have people who are potentially looking at not having somewhere to live. Our low-income families, as was indicated, do have difficulties, and again, not only low-income families, but any family that really is going from paycheck to paycheck, because they don't have the ability to come up with those deposits to move into a new place while they wait for the deposit on the old rental to come through. So that's a potential avenue for assistance. Rent is something that we have been doing in the past through that program. There are some other things that we could do, but all of it would be tied to some service, some type of third-party verification, so we're not just giving out funds to give out funds.
You good? Yeah. Commissioner Tabaya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell me how, you mentioned the FEMA reimbursement, can you tell me how this would be layered with state assistance programs? How would this come into impact with, say, the state program, which is the Disaster Unemployment Assistance Program?
The programs that I believe that we were talking about through emergency services are not the same ones that would do employment assistance. These are really to meet basic needs. Those employment services we'd look to try and tie to and make sure that those who are coming through the door to seek other assistance are aware of those services. For example, if we had somebody come in the door who had not applied to FEMA yet, before we would seek to utilize county general fund, we'd seek to have that person go through the FEMA process to get either an approval or a disapproval from them prior to utilizing the general revenue dollars. The same way, because we're not going to be looking at these dollars to help with employment, we would then try and tie them to those type of services that are out there from other agencies.
So if I'm following correctly, someone that would be in need of these assistance wouldn't be eligible for federal programs, and on top of that wouldn't be eligible for state programs, and on top of that hadn't taken the precautions for insurance or a rainy day fund on their own. These are the type of individuals that would potentially use these services. Is that correct?
Not entirely. I'm not saying that they would not be eligible for state services. What I'm saying is that we would be doing a research into the clients to determine that they are not seeking services and seeking funds for the same thing over and over. We would be trying to make sure that the dollars were not being, for lack of a better word, double-dipped, that they were not receiving funds from FEMA and then also coming to the county to receive funds for the same item. What I am saying is that they could be eligible for those other programs, but that eligibility in and of itself, as long as we're not looking to duplicate, would not be something that would either hinder them or not hinder them from getting further assistance through emergency services.
And one final follow-up. It looks like tentatively we agreed to decrease this amount, roughly 168,000. I think 28 of that is from an FTE, which ballparks at a little over 140,000. Is any of that, has that all been expended, or could, if we've appropriated that for the next year, if we go ahead and appropriate that for the next year, could we use those funds to help with relief for these type of individuals instead of doing the other programs that, don't have those stringent verifications that you just mentioned, that don't, track the individuals, that whether or not that this is a one-time, helping hand? Could we use the potential currently allocated dollars for the IRMA relief?
First, if I could, it's actually about $185,000 that were cut from the program. There's about $140,000 in services and a position of about $44,000 and change. So a total of about $184,942. As for the dollars that were left in the program, I would say that there is enough need that I would hesitate to take the dollars away from the regular emergency services program that we have in place to serve these additional clients who are coming in. The dollars have been programmed out of our budget for next fiscal year, so the only dollars that are left are those that would be directly for the services that were left in place by the board.
Commissioner Pritchett.
You just mentioned 185,000. I remember when we did this, it was about 102,000. So how are you getting the discrepancy of 80,000 right now? Because my head was wrapped around 102,000 when the conversation came up this morning.
Commissioner, it was the community-based organizations that was the 102,000. That was a 20% reduction over a 5-year period. During the budget workshops, the board voted to reduce the direct client emergency services by 50%. And at that time, it was anticipated that was $168,473.
Just for that portion?
Just for 50%, yeah. And that included the full-time position in the amount of $44,000. At that time, the benefits weren't included. That's where the difference was.
When we took this funds that we specified and they were moved at that point, and is that part of the money that we've rolled into using the critical needs right now? If we put that as, are those funds been absorbed into other areas that are identifiable?
We reduced the general fund transfer to Housing and Human Services for that program. Right now in the general government reserves, the tentative budget is set at just over $21 million. That's 10.58% greater than the operating revenue. And of course, our policy states that it's the goal to have your general government operating reserves at 10%. So we are slightly over the 10% goal in the general government operating reserves.
Correct, and we were using part of that, we had positioned to go into road reconstruction and these types of items. One more time, tell me how much, you're telling me you would have to add back on an FTE if we did this? Full-time equivalent, or?
Correct. One of the issues is that it is a very labor-intensive process to get someone through, and the application process itself. Like I said, that third-party verification takes a lot of effort, as well as the application and making sure that we're the contact with the landlord. If it's a landlord, we verify what their lease looks like. We verify what the rental amount is if we're paying rent. We verify all of those things independently of the client themselves. Just because, again, we won't take anybody's word for what they owe or what they need.
Well, just a question and a thought at the same time as I'm processing this, and this is one of the things that I thought was a good thing in the budget, that we did the one-time moving forward, getting people staying in homes. But if we're looking at adding some money back in for the hurricane people, let me throw out a thought. Wouldn't it be better to maybe find an organization that's already doing this and then give them a fund so we don't have to hire a FTE right now and then go through all that? If they've already got something going on and they're doing all the checks and it's in place, instead of recreating a position at this point, since we're talking about doing this for hurricane victims, would that maybe be a better avenue, even maybe financially, of our funding, trying to keep people in homes?
Commissioner, honestly, we have not had a lot of time to think about this, and what was brought forward is to put the dollars back. I think it's a board decision regarding how you put the dollars back. I do think, as Commissioner Barfield stated, there is a need for this. How you provide for that need is entirely up to the board, and we'll obviously, whatever your direction is, we will follow.
Correct. I was just thinking about that right now as we're talking through this process, because if we're looking at putting back $168,000, we're directly trying to get into hurricane victims or whatever dollar amount we're looking for, it might be a better process right now to find an agency that's already working this, has all the checks in place, and maybe give them the funds to help people, keep people in homes. And if we revisit this, and this is a program we want to pick up as a county again, I'm not against that either, but I'm not... I'm guessing we probably already have the funds available to do this if this is something we're wanting to do. So I'm not sure that this is going to have to be a change in millage tonight. So this might be a discussion for a few days here, figuring out how to fund this if we're going to.
Commissioner Nardi.
I'll try not to get too far in the weeds. Just a couple of questions. Now, would it be an absolute requirement that the individuals apply for FEMA assistance and be denied? I know you said that, but I mean, would that be part of the requirement in order to be eligible through the county?
Again, these are county dollars. We'll do whatever the direction of the board is, but typically what I would prefer to see is not someone potentially double dip. For example, if FEMA is going to give you assistance with housing, you shouldn't be coming to utilize county dollars for housing. So that would be something we'd be looking at, but again, whatever the board direction is, we'll design and we'll be able to accomplish moving forward.
And see, and some of my hesitation, and it's not because I'm heartless, I mean, I don't want anybody up here to think that, is that, during budget discussions, we had these discussions about, we could give you $2 million and it still wouldn't be enough to fill that need, because there's always going to be a need, and that's mainly when we were talking about CBO funding and emergency funding for that matter. I'm not sure where the onus of responsibility comes. Is the onus on us as a community to help these people? I mean, I think so, and that's what I'm doing in my neighborhood, in my community, and I would implore everyone to do the same, and I've seen it with my own eyes, employees, citizens alike. I don't know that it's our job as a government to try to completely fill that void, because this is like one, I say, minor storm, because, I mean, we were all, most of us were here in 2004, and it was much worse, in my opinion, as far as people without power, people without food. And for those that are vulnerable and eligible or hit that income mark of food stamps, I mean, they already talked about, giving more monies to help replace people who had lost food and that sort of thing. And again, like I said, it's a fine line, because we want to take care of our residents. However, we don't want this, because this isn't going to be our first storm. I mean, what's going to stop anybody on this board or you or anybody in the community for asking for more money that we just may not have, and it will never be enough. So, I mean, my heart breaks for those in need, and I would hope that, others like myself would step up and pull out their checkbooks and take your neighbors to the grocery store and do what you have to do to help your community. But I think, the idea of us reducing this was to try to make sure that the responsibility goes back on our community members to take care of one another. I mean, unless this commission, it's just an idea. This it's a news to me today, too, that this was even going to be considered. We reduced the CBO funding by, 20%. Maybe we have like a very specific, in a perfect world, if we were going to, as a commission, if we were going to keep these things as part of our budget, I'd rather see a fund that, was for people over 65, and a fund that was for Meals on Wheels, and a fund for hurricane disaster relief for those people that maybe do fall in between the cracks. But I think that, again, we're going in an area where we all want to help, and we all want to do good, and we want to feel good, and we want to help our neighbor, but at the same time, is that our role? Does that solely fall on us?
Commissioner Barfield?
Yeah, the reason I believe that it's important that we as a county do this is we do have the processes in place, and we also have the opportunity to vet them so much better. I won't say better, but we know what we're dealing with. We've been doing this. The county has been doing this before. And I think that's very important. And what I'm saying here is I'm not talking about this is going to be an annual thing. This is a one-time this year, and we'll visit this the next budget cycle. But I think at this point it's important. There's federal and state funding this time that will fill in a lot of these gaps. So I believe we're in a position where we can fill the gaps that they don't do. The other thing is this: our charities and our churches are full of you and me and people, and they're strapped. We've got debris, we've got roof damage, we've got all these other problems that we have to deal with, and that's how these charities are funded. So, I mean, it's a tough time for the county right now. It's much different than if everything's going really great. The well is getting dry. It's probably the only thing that's dry in our county, and it's just, I think it's a concern we need to deal with now. And I think the right way to go is to go ahead and put back the 180,000 and move forward from there. I believe that's the best thing we can do.
Commissioner Snarty.
And, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that if this commission held the same mindset where we do something like this as opposed to picking and choosing charities in our CBOs, because it does fall in the same category. So, I mean, if we're deciding, which organizations are going to receive funding, maybe the answer is, if we're taking care of those most vulnerable and those most in need, then it's not to a charter school, it's not to, an organization that provides different services that you may not support. I mean, it's just my 2 cents and my opinion on that, because 180,000 out of the CBO wouldn't be as much of a hit, and we could just shift those funds from there. From the CBO to this community emergency fund. Just a thought. Because I have less heartburn about this than I do about the CBOs. But that would at least seem more justifiable to me, because then it doesn't discriminate. Because that gentleman right there doesn't benefit from transportation for a charter school, for example. But he may benefit, or his neighbor may benefit, from assistance with his water bill or his power bill or his groceries.
Any other comments from the board?
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we refund this for $180,000 to go back into the Emergency Services Fund, and it will be used specifically to help the community from the standpoint of Hurricane Irma and any other gosh, I hate to say this, any other type situation similar to that, and that would be put back into it beginning October 1.
And it would be a one-time.
It's one time just for this year.
Second for discussion.
Commissioner, if I could, it's actually 184,942.
Okay. 184,942 then.
I think we should just go ahead and open it back up, sir, to what we had the use of it before, just in case there's not enough hurricane victims. If this is just keeping people in their homes. My thought on that is if you hire another full-time position and we only have need of $3,000 for hurricane victims, and we've really, I just think we should just make a vote this year just to put it back in and make a new decision next year, and then they can work on the hurricane victims.
Okay. Just a quick question. If this is going to be a temporary need, I think that's what's been discussed, how long do you think that temporary need will be?
Well, my understanding from what was proposed is that it is next fiscal year, and then those dollars are gone again. As for the other question, I think one of the things that we would look at if this is approved is go back and try and figure out, do we really need to bring in a full-time position? Is this something that we can do with a temp position?
That's the question. If this is about Irma, and it's a temporary need, but we're having a full-time employee, there's many problems. That's just the quickest one on the surface that pops up. So again, if we're voting for this, understand we're voting for a full-time person, but only a temporary need, which probably, after we deal with Irma, will not be helping the victims of the storm, I'm guessing. And on top of that, very briefly, we're asking taxpayers, those same people that had shingles fly off their house and fences fall down and power go out, to pay more in taxes, and to help fund this. To help fund this program. If this was a budget that did not have a tax increase, that would be one thing. But understand that we're asking those same people that work hard and pay taxes to pay more taxes, so they go to a subset of individuals here. So, and I'm real quickly, one final, is this would be coming out of the reserve budget? Is that where this would come out of?
Yes, it would.
I'd like to throw this out there, too. That within 6 months, you give us a report on where you are financially with all this, a report to the county commission, and at that point, if we need to adjust it, we can.
Adjust it downward, you're suggesting?
Mm-hmm. And I'd add that to my motion.
Okay, so your motion wants to say something like, we want to restore $184,000 to the Emergency Services Fund for 1 year only, and to be revisited in 6 months to see if we want to continue it at that time.
Yes.
And we have a second, and Commissioner Pritchett?
It's Nardi's first.
Oh, it's Nardi's, okay, yes.
I just have a quick question. So with that motion, will those funds be specifically designated strictly for hurricane relief? I guess, Mr. Barfield? Or is this going back into the emergency funding, or is this $184,942 going just into hurricane relief for Irma?
No, it'll be going into the Emergency Services Fund for them to determine what the uses are and if it's hurricane related or not. It's them, they'll have to deal with it.
See, and that's the only reason why I can't support it, because this isn't going, if this was committed, I could almost bite my tongue and support it, because then I would know that those funds are going directly to the people impacted. But again,
Okay,
I think because you never have enough funding for this program, like you said in the budget workshop, you can always use more funding, and that if we gave you more funding, you would find a need for it, because there's always people calling and asking for money or needing money. So that's my concern. If we don't need this much funding, and if you only had $30,000 in need for hurricane, we've now given that department or that allocation another $120,000 for what we were doing before that we were trying to get away from.
Commissioner, I think we'd be very comfortable saying these are dollars dedicated just to assist those with Hurricane Irma impacts, whether it be rent, whether it be deposits, whether it be help making their deductible. As you know, because of those percentages on insurance, we have people who might have to replace a roof at $15,000 and have a $8,000, $9,000 deductible. So it might be that type of use of these dollars. So I feel pretty comfortable that identifying these specifically for those impacted by the hurricane would work for.
But that's not just what Commissioner Barfield just said.
I'll amend mine to say that.
Okay.
Commissioner Pritchett.
With all these conversations, just a reminder that when we experience homelessness with a family that hasn't been homeless before, the impact on the taxpayers between $75,000 and $95,000 a year between emergency services and if it's a family, it's a little more expensive. So if you can come up with like $1,000 or so to keep somebody in their home, you've actually just had a net savings and revenue when we're able to do this, which saves the taxpayers thousands of dollars down the road. So that's just a good point to think of as we're making these decisions. It's actually a good cost benefit besides being good for people.
I call the question.
We have a question. Commissioner Barfield has made a motion. Commissioner Pritchett has seconded to restore the $184,000 to the Emergency Services Funds with the additional caveats. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Commissioner Tobias being the nay vote. Agenda 1A4.
We still need a vote on 1A3.
I make a motion to tentatively adopt the financial year 2017 through 18 millages.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the 2017-2018 millages, second by Commissioner Barfield. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Commissioner Tobias being the nay vote.
Agenda item 1A4. Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, based on the millage rates that were approved on agenda item 1A3, I will now ask the Budget Office to read into the record the revised aggregate millage rates.
Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, the aggregate rollback rate for the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget is 6.2967. The aggregate tentative millage rate for the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget is 6.3268. The tentative aggregate rate is 0.48% more than the aggregate rolled back rate.
Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, we are now ready for the rate approval and adoption of the specific program budgets. These actions are necessary in order to certify non-ad valorem assessment to the tax collector in accordance with the Uniform Method of Collection, Florida Statute 917.3632.
Commissioners, item 1B1 requests the adoption of the Stormwater Utility Resolution ratifying, confirming, and certifying the annual Stormwater Utility Special Assessment rolls.
Okay, item 1B1, request the adoption of the Stormwater Utility Resolution ratifying, confirming, and certifying the annual Stormwater Utility Special Assessment rolls. I'll entertain conversation or a motion.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution ratifying, confirming, and certifying the stormwater utility special assessment rolls.
Commissioner Pritchett has made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Barfield. Any further discussion? All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Item 1B2 requests the adoption of Schedule of Rates, Assessments, and Charges for Fire Service Operations, Hazardous Materials, Special Operations Team, fire prevention and inspection fees, and ratification, confirmation, and certification of the annual fire services non-ad valorem assessment roll.
This requires a vote on our part. Do we have a motion to approve the fire rescue assessments?
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution certifying the fire rescue assessment roll to the tax collector.
A second?
We have a motion by Commissioner Barfield to accept the fire rescue assessments, second by Commissioner Pritchett. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Commissioners, item 1B3 requests the adoption of a resolution certifying the Municipal Services Benefit Unit assessment rolls to the tax collector.
This also requires a vote by the board. Do I have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to adopt, ratify, and certify the Municipal Service Benefit Unit assessment rolls for the year 2017 through 18.
We have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett to accept. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second by Commissioner Isnardi. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Item 1B4 requests the adoption of a resolution establishing user fees for the fiscal year 2017-2018 for the Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District.
This too needs a motion to approve in a second.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Isnardi has made a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Barfield. Any discussion?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Isnardi?
I just wanted to note that the Melbourne-Tillman, and, we were at a meeting recently, and we've all met with the director of Melbourne-Tillman and his staff, and they went 9 years without even a CPI increase. So this is just something that I want this board to keep in mind, and obviously, and the way that, we talked about it earlier, the way that this is voted upon is that 3 commissioners vote, and 1 commissioner has veto power. So if that commissioner decides not to vote for a larger increase, then, we all have to agree that there's any. So I appreciate the fact that we were able to come up with something for them, a 1.26% increase, which I guess is better than nothing. But they have failing equipment, and we've really got to do something, because ultimately, when their ditches fill and they have to expend water into Turkey Creek, it's going to affect the Indian River Lagoon, and that's something I'll discuss later with the county manager, but perhaps there's alternate funding we can look at. But I want to make sure that we're funding this because it's such an important part of our system. So I just wanted that on the record.
Okay. We do. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
And next item is agenda item 1B5. Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, in accordance with the Brevard County Code of Ordinance, I request adoption of the fiscal year 2017-2018 budgets for the following agencies: Solid Waste Management, Storm Water Utility Department, Fire Rescue Operations, Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District. Pursuant to the local government emergency management powers granted in Section 252.38, subsection 3 Florida statutes, board approval of the budgets will be retroactive to September 15, 2017, and we would need a board vote on that.
Do I have a motion to approve this agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the budgets for the departments and the districts just read by County Manager Abate.
We have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Barfield. Any discussion?
Me again.
Commissioner Isnardi?
While I voted against the increase for solid waste, the commission voted to move forward with it. So I'm going to approve, I'll vote to approve this budget, but just want it noted that I don't agree with the increase for solid waste.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Agenda item 1B6. Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, it is requested that the governing body of the Barefoot Bay Water and Sewer District approve a resolution adopting a budget for fiscal year 2017-2018, and board votes required.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion we approve the resolution adopting a budget for FY 2017 and 2018 for the Barefoot Bay Water and Sewer District.
Commissioner Barfield makes a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Pritchett. Any discussion? All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Agenda item 1C1. Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, based on the action taken under agenda item 1A3, I now ask the Budget Office read into the record the revised tentative budget for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, the revised tentative budget for fiscal year 2017-2018 is $1,170,704,359. The revised tentative budget represents a decrease of 4.65%, or $57,118,185 from the current budget of $1,227,822,544.
Mr. Chairman and Board of County Commissioners, I request tentative approval of a resolution adopting the fiscal year 2017-2018 Brevard County budget.
Do we have a motion on the floor to approve?
I make a motion to approve the budget just read by Jill.
Commissioner Pritchett makes a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Barfield. Discussion, Mr. Tabaya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I'll be voting no on this budget because it's a tax increase as defined by the state and Jill in our budget office, I do want to thank our county manager for his diligent work crafting this budget. I wish we would have given you a little bit better discretion. This tax increase was very minor. It's not 1%. It's not 0.1%. But it's 0.089%. So I think that if my plan was not looked upon favorably, I think it was incumbent upon other members to come up with a plan that was responsible to the taxpayers, was not a tax increase, and would have allowed us with a good conscience to say that this is a budget that we can be proud of. So please understand that my no vote has no bearing on the hard work that you, your staff, and Jill in the budget office did to craft this. I greatly appreciate your time. I think it was a failing of this commission to provide you with a millage rate that was not a tax increase according to the Department of Revenue. So thank you again. Thank you.
Commissioner Pritchett.
I can't resist on that. I know as far as the Department of Revenue that it would appear that way, but the overall millage is lower than, it is a tax cut, except for those items such as parks and ills, which are voter voted in referendum, which needed to come up to be responsible. And it's just such a small amount. And I think you guys were incredibly creative with the amount of money you have, considering the amount of growth that we have going on in our county right now. We are up in population incredibly, and our budget hasn't been anywhere near where it should be as far as keeping up with the population that we have right now. And I think moving into the future, to be a responsible commission, we're going to have to actually look at a larger budget to be able to provide services for our citizens that I believe, at least in my district, I was voted in to carry out. and I look forward to helping provide these services responsibly into the future.
Commissioners Nardi?
I'm going to support this budget, and it's not because I agree with everything in it. It's not because, we didn't argue for, or discuss is probably a better word, for hours on end, what we should be doing, what our core function of a government should be. However, we did make some pretty decent cuts, I just wish we could have done a little better. I think we were really close to that rollback rate. However, we are taking in over $57 million less, and that account, that's, there's something to be said for that. And our millage rate has dropped from where it was last year. So I'm holding on to that and praying that we do better next year. I think we did an okay job this year, but I think that we can do better. And thanks staff for all your hard work, and all the departments for the many PowerPoint presentations and the many questions and the prying into your budgets and your salaries and your paper clips and your pencils. So I appreciate the amount of time that went into it.
All righty. We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Mr. Tabaj being the nay vote. Board reports. Mr. Abate.
No reports.
Ms. Bentley.
No report.
Ms. Pritchett.
No report, sir.
Mr. Barfield.
No report.
Mr. Tabaj.
No report.
I have no report. Mrs. Nardi.
No report.
This meeting is adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.